Howdy, folks. Welcome to this week's episode of Log Talk with Pert Near Outdoors. This is Billy, and this week's episode is going to be with Dan Ladd, who is a fellow New Yorker, an Adirondacker, a deer hunter, and the editor of New York Outdoor News. So wanted to get Dan on here, learn a little bit about him. Last year about this time, we had his predecessor, Scott Pyatt, on to hear about his career as he was wrapping that up in what he was doing, especially with the New York Outdoor News. So kind of fun to a year later to grab Dan and get him on here to hear a little bit about him and his backstory and what he's got going on with the paper. I strongly encourage anybody out there who is a New Yorker, or if you live in any of the states that New York or that the Outdoor News has a paper, I really encourage you to subscribe to that. It is a great place to stay up to date on what's going on in your state, both in your state and nationally, with hunting and fishing in the outdoors. Just fantastic information being covered in this paper, and it's a bi-weekly paper. You'll hear us talk quite a bit about it in this episode, but really recommend it. For a pretty minor investment of $27, you're going to get a paper. I believe you said it's 26 editions you'll get throughout the year, and you're gonna know what's happening in your state and what you can do, both just good information as well as things that are happening that you need to know about and should be getting involved with. So today the primary focus of the discussion is going to be obviously to get to know him, but then we're going to get into the New York State Deer Plan, our thoughts collectively on that. As well as we're going to get into some Second Amendment stuff and gun rights and some of the things that are going on, not just in the state here, but nationally. So fun conversation. I thought Dan would be a good guy to have that with, and hopefully a friendship that can grow, and talk more with him as he is a lifelong Adirondack deer hunter, and that is some content that you all seem to really enjoy. So I'm going to try to get some more stuff on here with Dan in the future. But appreciate his time. Head over and check out New York Outdoor News. Check Dan out on, he talks about a couple websites he's got. So enjoy, listen to that stuff and check him out, and enjoy the content he and his crew are putting out in the paper. That is that. ShedFest, just a reminder to everybody, we are keeping the enrollment open for the ShedFest until April 1st. So we got a couple more weeks here. The going is about to get good, as it seems like the winter is kind of letting its grip go a bit. And hopefully you will all get involved, get yourself a T-shirt, and get yourself a membership to National Deer Association with the purchase of your entry on our website, pertnearoutdoors.com. And more than anything, just getting yourself a shirt and getting yourself a membership. And if you get to find a shed and you can participate in the contest portion of things, that's great. If not, you can be assured that your money is going to a good place, and you'll have a pretty sweet limited edition T-shirt to rock as well. So that's what we've got happening here. I'm going to keep it short and sweet. We got a nice long conversation with Dan. Hope you enjoy. Have a great week, and keep fading them. Hello. Yeah, that's your name.
Squirrels got me.
Big Jim.
Yeah.
Really, 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 really cold and fun.
Cold and fun.
Cold and fun.
That's good that you think of it, because that's what deer hunting typically is cold and fun.
Yesterday morning, I'm glassing up on the pass, and I see these deer moving, and I'm like, ooh, there's some deer moving. All of a sudden, I just see this person just head down, just hauling ass, wearing shorts and a T-shirt with a pack on. And I'm like, is that Tard? My dad always talks about floating through the woods like the autumn breeze.
So Robert's
when you're
the
275 pounds, I don't know how you do that, but
the Freightliner. It's just like a creeper. You're just kind of up in the corner watching what's going on down there.
Yeah. He's like,
he's up there slapping it, pissing all over everything.
Is it warm yet?
How did you know the name of the actor?
That's right. I know.
Why did you say his name?
Hervé Villechaize. Remember this?
You know what pert near means.
If you know what pert near means and you live in America, you're a redneck too.
Welcome to the Log Talk Podcast, brought to you by Pertinier Outdoors. Joining us for this week's episode of Log Talk with Pertinier Outdoors, we've got Dan Ladd, who is a fellow New Yorker and the editor of New York Outdoor News. So, Dan, thanks for joining us today.
Great to be here, Bill.
Absolutely. It's spring is feeling like it's sprung. So I know we're due to get a couple more storms here, but I think we're out of the worst of it.
Well, as we talk about this, I am heading for Old Forge on Sunday, and the forecast there for Sunday is below freezing and possibly below zero Sunday night. It's going to be one last ice fishing trip.
Nice. Cool.
Yeah, one last one.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like, I don't know, down here in the Finger Lakes region, it seems like a lot of guys had a hard time that the ice didn't, especially on the deeper lakes, the ice didn't really get on good until, it seemed like they only had a few good weeks of ice. But up north, it's a little bit different, right? I mean, you guys get into having some thicker ice a little bit earlier up in the Adirondack region.
All about elevation. Even here, I guess I'm in what you would call the foothills of the Adirondacks, the Lake George region. My elevation here at my house is about 500 feet, but you get up towards Schroon Lake, you're up more, I think around 11 or 12, even higher, 13, 14. And so that's, even though that lake is only 25, 30 miles north of here, the elevation makes it different. And even though it has a river passing through it, it's, that is one of the first lakes to freeze and one of the last to hang on. And I fished a tournament there last weekend. And there was easily probably between 16 and 20 inches of ice, depending on where you were. Now drop down 25 miles south of there, you have Lake George. Lake George has been more along the pattern that you just described. It iced over right around Valentine's Day, and it's probably going to run its course this weekend.
Yeah.
I don't think you see anglers out there after this weekend.
Nope. No,
I won't be one of them.
No, there's some brave sons of guns that'll get out there, and it's like, what are you guys doing? Every year you see people even too early, popping through the ice, and it's like,
yeah,
what you think was going to happen? It's been cold for a week,
I don't know. I wait for about 4 inches, and then I'm always ready to hang it up when it starts to get. There's nothing like a nice day on the ice like today.
Oh, for sure.
There's nothing better than a beautiful weather day to ice fish. I mean, it's fantastic, but at the same time, you got to use common sense. And you hear the stories. If you ever go on to like iceshinny.com, you read about how these guys are coming off the ice and they're using planks to get out on the ice or to get across a pressure ridge or something like that. It's like, okay, that's kind of, I've done that. I won't say I haven't, but I haven't gone out intentionally knowing I would have to do that. It's something I found when I got there or came off the ice one day and had to jump off the ice to get to shore. I've been there. A lot can happen to ice on a warm weather day. A lot.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff going on underneath the ice that you don't need to know about or think about, because it's a little terrifying. But so the goal of today's discussion, you and I chatted last week, just kind of getting to know each other a little bit and talking about what we were going to get into today. You are the editor of New York Outdoor News. I want to kind of get who you are out there a little bit. About this time last year, I actually had Steve Pyatt on, and he was just wrapping up his tenure in that position. So it was cool to get to know Steve and chat with him about some stuff. But I think, over this last year, when I talked to Steve, we had no idea what was coming down the pipe with COVID. And it's been very, very informative, and it's been a very important piece for me as far as keeping up with what's going on in our state with the outdoors, having the paper coming to me every other week. So I think it's a great opportunity to get you on here to talk about some of the hot topics right now in New York, and then just kind of shoot the breeze a little bit and see where the conversation goes. So I guess first and foremost, start out with kind of, true introduction of who you are, where you're from, kind of your background, and then we'll lead into the magazine or into the paper.
I've been lived in New York my entire life. I've pretty much lived in Washington County most of my life, which is in eastern New York near the Vermont border, right in the Washington County. Half of it's in the Adirondacks and half of it's farm country. So I'm right near that northern zone, southern zone boundary line, which has kind of been unique for me, but I've always been kind of a northern zone deer hunter. mainly because I've just never really had a lot of places to hunt in the southern zone. I'd love some, mainly for turkeys, more for deer, but that's a different story. But I grew up in this region, been around the Adirondacks my entire life. My father was a deer hunter, part of a family of deer hunters that mostly hunt the Adirondacks. We run around the woods making deer drives. We still practice that technique to this day. I went to college in Plattsburgh, SUNY Plattsburgh, about 2 hours from here, up on the Canadian border, near the Canadian border, just outside the Adirondacks. So I was always driving through the Adirondacks, spent some time in the Adirondacks. And the older I got, the more time I spent outdoors. I was primarily a hunter, but I started hiking like the high peaks, country skiing, and eventually I started to write. And that's a story unto itself, but I got involved with a little community newspaper, eventually wound up writing some articles for a bigger paper in Glens Falls, a weekly called The Chronicle, a very, very good newspaper. And that morphed into a weekly column about 2003. And the column had a lot of legs. Again, it was a great paper. So my affiliation with that paper helped me, and they always said that work helped them. So it was a great partnership, and I learned a lot. Still good friends with the editor, Mark Frost. And it was just a great opportunity for me to hone my skills. Along the way, I published a book in 2008 called Deer Hunting in the Adirondacks, reprinted that in 2010. Threw together another book. I don't hate to use that term threw together, but everyone said I should write a book, that combination of articles I've written. So I have one of them called Well Seasoned in the Adirondacks. And probably what was my calling card for a long time was a website that I launched in 2000 called adkhunter.com, which was basically a deer hunting website focused strictly on the Adirondack Park. And it basically celebrated deer hunting in the park. And the more I wrote, the less time I had for the website. But it was still always that business card. You know what I mean? It was that had my name out there. That's where people could find me. I'm still maintaining the site, although I don't have the time for it now that I used to have. And I don't know what the future of that website's going to be, but I am trying to keep it going. But through it all, I was doing some work with Steve for Outdoor News on occasion. And when he told me he was going to retire, I definitely wanted to get my foot in the door and get my application out there. And I went through the process, and I was fortunate enough to be hired. And yes, I started exactly a year ago. My start date was March 2nd of last year. So a year ago at this time, I was in basically wrapping up my second week on the job. I was riding Steve's coattails for a little while, and I was basically at the helm by April 1st, full time.
Yeah.
With Steve off fishing and turkey hunting.
Yeah.
Enjoying his retirement. Sad enough for him. I mean, I still feel bad for him this day. He obviously had greater expectations for the things him and Paula were going to be able to do once they retired. Of course, has thrown a wrench into that. And it has for me. I mean, I really anticipated being out there in the public with this job, meeting people, going to some shows, shaking hands, hanging out in the subscription booth, maybe traveling to more events that I would want to write about. There's been very little of that. And hopefully that's something that'll change, because I do like to get out. I'm a hands-on guy, and I'm okay with taking a Saturday and jumping in my truck and going to a fishing tournament or an archery tournament or whatever, something I might even just write a small story about, but I still want to be there, just to get to know people and be around people. So there's been very little of that for me as well. But other than that, it's been going great. I mean, Outdoor News is a very well-structured company based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. They have papers in 7 states, and New York happens to be one of them. And I'm grateful to the founders, Glenn and Diane Meyer, who started this paper out there in Minnesota so many years ago. And there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. A lot of people credit the editor, or they critique the editor, but and that's part of the job, I understand that. But there's just so much that goes on underneath what happens in a newspaper. So it's pretty amazing. It really is.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I mean, and having a bi-weekly newspaper that's solely focused on a niche market, a niche interest with being the outdoors,
Mm-hmm.
I got to imagine it's got to be a ton of work in the background. It's like, as the editor, what is that? I mean, I'm not in that realm. I'm not a writer. Like, what does it mean to be the editor of the paper? Are you kind of compiling everything that everybody's submitting, and you're kind of structuring what you want in the paper each edition, or?
Some of the stuff goes through the main office. Like if you submit a photo, for example, that winds up on those reader shot pages that you see where there's 15, 18 shots, I usually don't handle them unless they're mailed to me. I just turn around and mail them to the main office. We have staff out there that does that for all 7 papers. That's
Okay.
what they do. Same with the contest. We just had the best buck contest,
Mhm.
and again, that was a photo based thing. Somebody wrote me a letter thanking me for a nice job in the contest, and I said, listen, I had nothing to do with that. That was Eric Meyer out in Minneapolis, and our layout people and the all the people that work on the papers that do the graphics work. That's them. I had nothing to do with that at all, other than telling people what's going on in my editorial. Now, to answer your question, when it comes to the news stories like you see on the front page throughout, if you kind of look at the paper, you'll see it's kind of broken up into sections. The first third of it is usually news, hard news. This is what's happening. They'll have a dateline, Albany, New York, Buffalo, New York, Rochester, wherever. Those are all stories that I'm responsible for gathering, whether I write them or I assign them to a writer or pick them up off some of the wires that are out there, or press releases from different organizations that we kind of restructure a little bit. That's pretty much the foundation and the core of the paper. It's all about telling sportsmen what's going on. And I think that is the number one important role that this paper plays. It's our job to tell you what's happening. Otherwise, you don't know. So when I'm sitting down, we just put the March 19th paper to bed yesterday. It's at the printers now. Now I'm working April 2nd. So this morning, I've already been compiling things that might wind up in the mixed bag section, or the Beyond New York section, or the cuffs and collars, things like that. All these emails that have come in while I've been working on the previous paper, I'm sorting through and figuring out where they're going to go in the next paper. So it's a constant cycle of doing that. Meanwhile, in the middle of the paper, you'll see we have some columnists like myself, Glenn Saper, Steve still writes a column, and Oak Duke writes a really interesting deer hunting column.
Mhm.
That's material. Those guys are churning that out once a month. So that's their insight on the topic of the day or advice that they may share on their expertise. And then we move into what we call feature articles, and that's the how to, where to, what to, when to, how to rig a tip up, or ice fishing tips right now. Next issue coming up is our saltwater preview. So we have a lot of stuff from Long Island, striper fishing, fishing off Montauk Point, things like that. And some of our news stories are focused around that. And also our back page feature, which I have to gather every month, that's going to be focused on Long Island. So for the guys who don't saltwater fish, they're probably going to go, geez, a little heavy on the Long Island stuff. But hey, the next one coming up is turkey hunting. So that'll be focused on that. That's the theme for that. So that's all feature material. We use New York writers for some of that. And then we have stuff that comes out of our central pub office for that as well. So it's a mixture of both. And that's all good stuff. That's what keeps the paper sitting on coffee tables for a little while and keeps people interested. I know that not everybody reads every article. To be honest with you, when I was a reader and not the editor, I didn't read the stuff that didn't really pertain to me, but I always found something in there that did, and that's the beauty of it. It reaches such a broad audience within the sporting community.
Yeah, no doubt. And I've got a stack of them. I can't get myself to throw them away. I think I have every one of them from the last year, because it's,
Good.
and I'll tell you what's cool is, like it's that local, New York State, it's a big state, but once you get to know, once you get more in tune with what's going on in the hunting community and the fishing community and just outdoors in general, you start to recognize some of the names, you see some of the people, and, like I was telling you, the article that you had in there about the lever action this past time around, it's a family friend of ours. I'm just flipping through the paper and it's like, oh, hey, I literally know that guy, so you kind of, it's very fun to be a reader of this paper and have that local flavor. It's not just a, deer and deer hunting magazine that's nationwide. And it's, a lot of stuff that's, that's just an example of a magazine, but, it's not necessarily applicable to what's going on right here in your backyard. And I love reading Oak Duke stuff, his columns on deer hunting and his takes on some things. And he just had that article, I don't know if it was last paper or the one before, about this past rut, and what his thoughts were on that. It lined up exactly, we all kind of felt, the more I talked with people, it was like, man, something was just different about this year's rut, the timing of it, and when it was the best time to be in the woods, when the deer movement was. So it's really cool. Like that's the down home feel you get from the paper, is that it's stuff that's actually happening right in your backyard.
Two things about Oak. When he was sending me articles in the summer, the idea had come up to have this rut tracker. I don't know how you like that or how the readers liked it, but I thought it was pretty neat. It was something different. And what we wanted to do was follow the rut through 4 issues of the papers. So we started like right around early October and ran it through late November. And it was just him analyzing the rut one stage at a time. We did get a little criticism for it because some people wanted that information sooner. So Oak is already writing an article coming up about forecasting this year's rut, so people can plan for it, take their time off, or whatever it is they want to do to adjust that. But we're probably going to go do the rut tracker again as well, and because people had a lot of fun with it. It was really a neat feature, and he enjoyed doing it. He thought it was pretty intense. So that's Oak is a good resource, and he spends a lot of time in the woods, both with bow and gun, and he has some pretty interesting techniques. If you really talk with him about some of the things he's done in the past and still does, whether it's moving overhanging branches from one area to another, just to get the buck stirred up. It's simple and it works. Just go scent free, wear rubber gloves when you do it, and take a overhanging branch from one area that you hunt and swap them. Swap them out, and it makes the bucks think there's another buck living in their territory.
That's a really good idea.
It generates traffic. I mean, that's a simple thing.
Yeah.
How hard to try that? It's easy,
Yeah.
I've done it.
He's from Western New York, right?
Yes, Steuben County.
Okay.
Steuben, is that how you say it?
However, tomato. I'm not here to judge. Yeah, it's that's cool, man. And you said so much, in that whole piece there about your background and how you got to where you are. And I think I had heard you had you been on with Todd Waldron on his podcast before, maybe?
I have.
Okay. So I kind of heard some of your background, but I guess I didn't remember. I wasn't aware about the ADK Hunter website. That's pretty interesting. And I guess I'm kind of, in the same vein, how have you seen things change? You've been in this for so long, with the development of social media and, more video content and audio content out there with podcasts and YouTube videos and stuff. Have you seen like people's like desires for the written word change, or have you seen it come and go?
Somewhat. When I first launched ADK Hunter, there were very few people that even had a computer. This was the pre-smartphone age. So it was basically for people that had home computers. That's who I was. I was studying, I was learning web page design at my full-time job, and I parlayed it into a website. So early on, for probably the first 4 or 5 years, you saw digital camera photos. Some people would actually mail me photos, send me photos in the mail, and I would scan them and post them. Then, of course, I went to cell phones, but at first, the cell phone photos were horrid, and I couldn't run that. But what's happened over the course is the cell phone has connected everybody to the industry. That's what's happened. The cell phone brought the internet to everybody, even if indirectly, and especially sportsmen. So with that came video, obviously, because anybody can shoot a video of anything. I mean, I use my cell phone to shoot the fishing report videos that we post on the New York Outdoor News website for the people who subscribe to the fishing reports. But they've come a long way. They weren't always that great, but over time, the photos have improved. The one thing that social media has done to websites like mine is it's drawn traffic away. It's a lot easier for people to use Facebook than it is a website. One problem I have with Facebook is once it's posted today, if it's a busy Facebook page, it's buried within a day or two. It's gone. Whereas on a website, whether it's me or somebody like New York Antler that Joe Cervello does, that stuff stays and it stays relevant. It's there for you. It's a record. It's a reference, so to speak. So a regular website still has advantages. How that refrains the print media, it's all about keeping with having the two complement each other. And one thing that Outdoor News does not do is we do not post a lot of content in the paper on the website. And I even have writers say, hey, when am I going to get this? When will this be on the web? And I said, it's not. you know, it stays in print because that's, you know, we want people to pick up the printed copy. If we posted everything online, we wouldn't be able to sell subscriptions, obviously.
Right.
So but we do have an online presence. We have blogs. There's all kinds of online content through Outdoor News. New York is just part of it. Myself, Billy Hiltz, and Mike Rakowitz, all blogs on there. I'm trying to beef up our social media presence. I'd like to see a few more of the articles in the paper wind up online, but the blogs are pretty good and we're promoting them. We don't have a New York Outdoor News Facebook page, so I usually pass stuff around my 80khunter.com Facebook page. So I'm trying to build that up a little bit here and there. I'm sharing stuff on my own Facebook page and just trying to get things circulating more on social media. Prime example, we had a survey that we do in the paper. If you look on the editorial page, every issue, there's a little survey down at the bottom. That's published online. You go on our website and that's where you take the survey. Well, I was publishing the results and it wound up beefing up, I think, the survey a little bit, because it was basically if you could pick one of the items that's out there right now, crossbow expansion, junior hunting expansion, or hunting hours expansion, what would it be if you could only pick one? And of course, a lot of people would say all three, you know, and of course, there's a lot of us that want all three. But if you had to pick one, what would it be? So that got some stuff going, some people talking. It was pretty interesting and it was fun. I had fun with that last week when that was going around.
Yeah, and I guess that's all of what I find that stuff very interesting, what you're saying about the website and the social media, and I'm trying to obviously grow this podcast, and I find it very interesting as I try to grow. It's a lot of times it gets very frustrating because it seems like you're in an echo chamber and social media is basically my only marketing tool right now.
Right.
You know, so if people on Facebook and Instagram that follow us listen to it, then that's who listens to it. But then outside of that, you know, I'm not able to, you know, get the word out there about what we're doing. And I feel like we're putting out some great content, but I just don't think it's getting in front of people. If they don't know about it, they're not getting it. And if the only place I'm marketing it is there, then that's kind of the dead end street there. But then kind of going back around to you, it's the same thing. You know, you bring up, you know, with you post an article on a Facebook page. If 20 other people post something within the next hour,
It's gone.
you're way down the
Buried.
page and nobody even knows it, you know? So I find it super interesting, especially Facebook, but Instagram's no different. But Facebook, you know, there's these groups, these New York hunter groups that have, 20, 30,000 people in these groups, and you get like no interaction at all. And it's
Right.
very interesting. But I find myself when I participate in those groups, I basically turn off all the notifications because you just get bombarded with notifications all
Sure.
the time. So it's, you know, yay, it's a collection of all those people, but you know, you're not really getting anything out of being part of those groups other than seeing pictures of bucks, you know, like or things that are awful for hunting and shouldn't be put out there. You know, that's kind of what you get, one or the other.
You guys got a good looking website though. I bounced around your website and
we need to do more with it. That's the problem. It's just time.
Cross-platforming, you know, it's the putting your podcast on Facebook, having your Facebook link on your website, having your website on your Facebook page. You know, it's all that inner circle and just hoping you pick up people along the way. And then a lot of it's word of mouth and word, you know, even, and there's still value in print. I mean, I have to say, I live it every day. So, and I did that with my old job and my previous job. I worked with newspaper clients all around the country. So it was, you know, there's still a lot going on in the newspaper business. 10 years ago, they said it was dying. 10 years before that, they said it was dying. It's still there.
The reason why I asked you that, you know, back a few minutes ago about, you know, how do you see things changing with the paper? Me personally, I'm finding it to be incredibly valuable, especially over this last year having the paper. And I think I already said that, but now I'm getting to the point where I don't want to read stuff online. You know, my wife and I are trying to put our phones down. We have our phones out too much. So I get the New York Outdoor News. I sit down at the counter, you know, and I'm not on my phone, but I'm reading some articles, you know, and you can put it down, you can pick it back up. And I just feel like it's a different way of engaging than having something posted on a website or whatever. I think readers probably read more if it's in written word than it is if it's somebody's got some huge long post on Instagram
I
or
still
Facebook.
take reading material with me to my hunting camp, especially if I'm alone up there. I've always got newspapers, magazines, books with me. For a while, I was putting stuff on my tablet, and taking that, but I've kind of gotten away from the tablet and just use a laptop all the time. I don't do a lot of reading on my phone just because it's so small. I mean, I have some stuff on there, files that I can get to that are like on my iCloud storage, whatever.
Right.
But most of my reading is done with paper. And the Kindle generation, I've seen it. My wife is not a big internet person or electric person. She does have a Kindle reader. She used that for a while and she went right back to printed books. At first it was the greatest thing, and she still will read a book on her Kindle or her iPad, I mean, but she'd rather hold a book in her hand.
Yeah.
And I think that's the case for a lot of people. I still think there's something to be said. I mean, I'm a book collector. I've got a bunch of them behind me, and that's just I have a whole library in the loft of my home, and a whole outdoor library. And I'd love to be able to sit down and read them all. But lately I've been reading turkey hunting books. I had some given to me I bought a Ithaca 10 gauge from a friend of mine that I used to hunt with a lot. And he's retiring from hunting, and he gave me all of his turkey hunting books when I bought the gun from him. And so I've been reading those books on the side, and that's been pretty enjoyable. Most of them are written in the 70s. So it's a little different take on turkey hunting.
That's really cool. As we just kind of wrapping up actual discussion about the paper physically itself. So how much is it for a subscription? Where can people go to sign up? Right now, I know I signed up last year at the Western New York Outdoor Expo. That doesn't happen anymore. So, how does somebody sign up if they would like to without having that in-person type deal?
Sure. Well, if they pick up a copy, so we have a tendency to mail out courtesy copies. There's been some promotions like that going on. So a lot of people may be getting a copy in the mail that they wonder how they got it. They're on a mailing list somewhere for whatever reason, and they've got a complimentary issue. In every paper, there is multiple subscription forms, but there's definitely one towards the back on our marketing page. The website's a good place to go. You can sign up on the internet, outdoornews.com. Just once you can basically subscribe for any of the papers there. When you get to the subscription page, you just pick the state you want. I believe it's $27 a year right now. Those are the two easiest ways to subscribe. Again, get your hands on get your hands on a paper, or go to the website, and you can subscribe right there. You can even call in if you're not comfortable with using a credit card online. There's a phone number you can call and just ask for subscriptions, and you will talk to a real person.
Wow. Talk to Peggy somewhere, or Jake from State Farm.
Yeah.
One of the two of them.
Yeah, it's you will talk to a real person. The name is Stacy. She's a nice gal.
Nice. That's awesome. So the main reason I wanted to get you on here was to get into some of the juicy stuff that's going on in New York. And I was talking to our friend Nate Kennedy, a mutual friend of ours, and was picking his brain on some things because he does some writing. And I was curious if he knew anybody that would be good to reach out to talk about some of these things. And he definitely recommended you. And I thought that would be a great idea because you are speaking and writing about a lot of these things in the paper. So wanted to kind of get into probably two of the hottest topics right now, and that being the New York Deer Plan, some of the things that have been that have transpired over the last 6-8 months with that, what we're looking forward to this upcoming deer season with some of the changes that will be in place, some of the feedback we've gotten. And then I want to get into talking a little bit about some of the Second Amendment stuff that's currently going on in New York. I think it's very important if people aren't a reader to this paper and maybe totally unaware of a lot of the stuff that's going on with the state. I think it's important to talk about some of those items there. So let's start with the deer plan, since that's the funner conversation, if funner's a word. So you guys with the paper did a great job of kind of highlighting the deer plan. It was what, 75 pages, something like that.
Yeah, it was almost 80 pages. And that was released on the Friday after Thanksgiving. That's right. When it was released. And I spent a weekend in deer camp reading that thing and then writing an article about it on Monday morning because there was a really short porch there for commenting for the public. They had to really get their comments in by the end of December. And we had an issue going to press the following week for the paper. And I said, we got to get this in now. I mean, it can't wait another issue because it just was a bad timing. And that's not DEC's fault or anybody's fault. It's just the way the chips fall. So the deer plan, DEC does one of these, I think every 5 years. They did a big one in 2011 or 2010. And that was the beginning of a lot of some of the policies that they're starting to build on. They amended it in 2015, I believe, for a 5-year plan, or 16, and now they're looking at another one. Well, along the way, some things popped up. One, sunrise, sunset changes. That was just something that the guys who were with QDMA, now the Deer Association, that kind of came to the forefront in October. So that got tossed in at the end, and there's a lot of support for that. We've had quite a debate about that, and everyone has their own feelings about it. I wrote some things about it that were just my own observations. I went in the woods every morning and every evening of the early muzzleloading season here in the northern zone, and I just reported what I saw. I wasn't saying do it or don't do it. I was just saying this is what I observed. And my observation was that most mornings you can't see very well 30 minutes before daylight if you're in the woods. A little different on a clear morning in a field in a tree stand. And those are the observations I was sharing. DEC put it in the plan. If you ask me what's going to happen, I think they're probably going to change that. Now, granted, the plan isn't a plan as a whole. It has all these different parts to it. Some of them may happen, some of them may not. The other thing that came up late, which is going to happen, is the holiday hunt, the holiday week hunt. And again, you got people that are all for that, and you have people that are a little bit worried about it. Some of them are worried about its impact on local deer herds. Some guys that are a little more focused on antlers are afraid that some bucks will be shot that otherwise wouldn't, antlers or not. They didn't get the buck that year. They're hoping for next year, and somebody's going to pop them around Christmas time. Yeah. And he may get shot thinking it's an antlerless deer because the horns have fallen off. The antlers have fallen off. That's a concern. But the biggest concern I heard about that had to do with conflicts with snowmobile clubs. And I pointed that out early on. I'm not tooting my own horn. That when I heard about the holiday hunt, that's the first thing that popped into my mind.
Yeah,
I was just going to go over snowmobiling. Where I live, snowmobiling is big business. The restaurants around here thrive on it. Trails pass by within a half mile of my house. We're pretty close to the farm community. The snowmobile clubs are active. I have to believe that if you're a landowner that owns, say, a big 300, 400, 500 acre farm, and you allow snowmobilers to ride through that farm, and you're a hunter, what's going to happen during the holiday week if there's a lot of snow? You're not going to allow snowmobiling on your land because you're going to be hunting it. I can see that happening. I'm not saying it's going to happen across the board, but I'll just summarize it to say that I see a conflict with the snowmobiling community and the hunting community on that. DEC's finding on it, and they put it in the mission statement or the statement. I can't think of the title it's called. It's published online.
Mm-hmm.
And it had all the comments on it from the snowmobiling community and some of their concerns. And basically they have found, DEC feels that there's very few years when there's really enough snow for that to be a big deal. So we have no choice but to see what happens. They passed it. It's going to happen this year. And that was in the deer plan. Some of the things I liked in the deer plan, they were talking about expanding the hunting down on Long Island in Westchester County. They were going to make Westchester County's bow season, which could potentially be a crossbow season, go into January. Right now you can hunt in Westchester County through the end of December. So they would expand that into January. The other thing I kind of liked is how the special focus area in Tioga County around Cornell, around Ithaca, in that area.
Yep.
They're looking at doing more of them. And I think that's a great idea. And these are the things that I didn't hear a lot of people comment on in the plan. They were focused on the bigger issues,
on the sexy items. Yeah.
And the hours. Yeah. And, but the special focus areas, that's DEC does need to micromanage deer populations in certain areas. I feel strongly about that. And that's exactly what they're trying to do. And so I commend them for it. I think it's a great idea. I think if they want to look at another area, whether it might be your city or my town or whatever that has a local population, this would give them the authority to have such a season there like they're doing with Tioga County.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a pretty good thing. I thought that made sense. And then of course the other issue is the crossbow, and that's in the state budget right now, along with lowering the hunting age 12, the big game hunting age. That's a package deal. All right. I have spoken with a couple of people in a senator. I've been emailing my local senator, and I spoke with my local assemblyman just this week about these, and that they're a package deal. You're not in the state budget. You're not going to get one without the other. If for some reason they don't survive the budget, then they would come out probably as separate bills to be negotiated, later this year. But right now, unless something changes in the budget, they are one item. So they're tied together, and they have to get through what's called the one house bill process. And that is where basically the budget's out there, the governor has what he wants in it. Now the Senate and the Assembly get together, and somebody from the governor's office, and they talk about what they like, what they don't like. And if something comes up and there's a heated discussion about anything, and there's a lot of one house bills. I mean, it's crossbow, there's probably hundreds of things that this is only one of them. So it has to survive that process. And if there's something highly debated and time is of essence, that's where it could be kicked aside, so it could potentially be taken out there. Whether it will or not, nobody knows, because we're not there yet. But according to the assemblyman I spoke with this week, Matt Simpson here in our area, he was expecting to hear about the scheduling for the one bill discussions any day. So that's going to happen sometime between now and April 1st. And then April 1st is when the budget is due. Now, the wrinkle in all this is the controversy surrounding the governor's office, which is a whole different ball of wax. But that's something that I'm personally concerned about. That I thought it was worth raising that question, and I did so in my upcoming editorial. I thought it was worth asking that question. So I did ask that question to my senator. He doesn't really know. He kind of thinks the budget would move forward because it's important. We were coming in, we're in a we're still involved with COVID, but last year obviously was a horrible year financially for the state. So I think what he was saying between the lines, and I can't quote him on this, was that there's a sense of urgency to get the budget done.
Right.
Regardless of what's happening with the governor and his situation, I'll leave it at that.
Right.
Regardless of what happens there, he sounded like the budget was going to be a priority. Now, will it? We've seen the budget go well beyond April 1st. We've seen things like this crossbow stuff get tossed out at the last minute when the budget has a problem. So, I mean, if you're for it or against it, keep your fingers crossed that it could go either way. I don't think there's a way to say. I can't sit here and say it's going to happen or not happen. I really, and I don't think anybody can. And I certainly don't know enough about politics to say why it should or shouldn't, other than that's the writing on the wall. That's the facts, is that, they've yet to get together and talk about it. And that's where it's going to be decided, is when it happens. So
yeah,
however you feel one way or the other, now's the time to make your voice heard.
Yep. Now you just kind of highlighted the main points. I want to kind of circle back to each one of them and kind of I'm going to share my thoughts on them, kind of where myself and the guys and my family, friends, whatever, everybody that I talk to, feelings on these issues, but then kind of you kind of already touched on some of your personal thoughts on them, but going back to the hours discussion, I think every hunter would be lying if they said that they haven't been in the woods and heard, especially during gun season, opening day in particular, heard many shots well before legal shooting hours. So I think inherently New York State has got a problem because you have a law in place that hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of hunters every single day of deer season are doing the wrong thing. Yeah. So I think that's,
you don't hear the bow shoot.
right. Well, exactly. And I mean, I can take an example like me, opening day of gun season. I typically find myself somewhere in a patch of hemlocks. I like to hunt kind of cover and escape routes on opening day of gun. It's dark in there. It's inherently going to be darker than it is even out in the middle of an open hardwood stand that has no leaf cover. So you sit there and you hear these gunshots and you're like, how in the hell is somebody shooting right now? Well, you're not in their spot. You don't know that situation. And you're sitting on the edge of a field, especially if you got some snow on it. You can see pretty damn well at what, I don't know what time. I'd have to say like 6:30 or 6:45. A lot of those first gunshots you hear sometimes are between 6:15 and 6:30, depending on the day. So
I've heard shots in Southern Zone on a moonlit night with snow on the ground an hour after the sun went down.
really,
Oh yeah.
yeah. And you don't know the situation, whatever. But yeah, I think that's the hard part that we have with this is that the state has a law in place that is it's a very tough law because when you're, especially evening hunts, you see time and time again, people getting out of their stands. Well, it's legal shooting lights up. I'm gonna get out of the stand. It's 4:25, 4:30. And it's like, it's not even prime time yet. Like the deer haven't even started moving. So it's just, I'm very happy that they're looking at it. I hope that it passes personally, because I think it'll make any decisions that are being made, not breaking the law. And there's a lot of really good hunting to be had. And at the end of the day, with any of these items that we're talking about, it's up to the hunter's discretion. When they say, hey, it's legal to do this, that doesn't mean you have to go do it. If you're uncomfortable with that shot or you don't believe in that, then you make that choice. But if there's people out there that are, that is within their realm of confidence, or they're in a certain spot where they can hunt ethically and make a good shot in those periods of time, then I don't see a problem with it.
I think they are going to change it. I'm on the fence with it a little bit just because of my own observations, but I also agree with what you're saying about it's the hunter's decision in the end. And a lot of people have written letters to the paper, have expressed that same sentiment. I think it's going to pass. I think they're going to change it, I think they're going to change something. Maybe it'll be 15 minutes and not a half an hour. But again, it comes back to the fact that other states have it in place and they haven't noticed any safety, changes in safety. I think New York is obviously a pretty safe state when it comes to hunting. We're a little concerned about that right now with the number of new hunters that are out there, but I haven't seen the stats yet. They should come anytime. But I think I know of only one fatality, and it was actually in my region. I don't know if they're going to clarify that as a hunting incident. I don't like the term accident, because the guy had put his muzzleloader in his vehicle and he shot himself when he was taking it out hours later.
Oh my God.
So I don't know if that's going to be classified as a hunting shooting related incident or not. It may be, I don't know.
Yeah.
But again, getting back to this topic, I think it is going to pass. If you were to ask my opinion, if I was to guess what decision DC will make, it'll be that they will change it, because I think there's a lot of support for it, and it has worked in other states. So that's what I think will happen there.
Mm-hmm. How about moving to the holiday hunt? So, you talked on the perspective, the first thing that came to your mind with the snowmobiling. And I was actually out visiting a customer this week, and he's very active in the local snowmobile organization, but he's also a hunter. And we had a fun chat about it. And he did reference the article from the paper where you talked about, or I forget whether it was you or somebody else in the writing talking about the fact that looking back over history, there has not been that many days of snowmobiling in December in that last week of the month, or the last week and a half of the month.
That was from DEC's report. Yeah,
okay.
I included the article. And
yeah, so it's it's very localized. You look at New York State, the DEC is trying to look at the entire deer population, and they're trying to make judgments on how they can best manage the population. And I guess this is the second part of this question, but finishing my thought is that most of the snow we get in December, especially over the last 7, 8, 10 years, has been lake effect, and lake effect's very localized. So you can drive around, and sure, Chautauqua County has got piles of snow, Southern Erie County, Wyoming County, Cattaraugus, etc., they'll have snow, or you go up to Tug Hill, but that's in the northern zone, so it's aside from this discussion. But it's not we don't just have feet of snow and trails open come December 25th. So I'm glad that they're looking at it. I think there's a lot of other states. You look at some of the big destination hunting states for whitetails across the country, they have a late season. Yeah. And our neighboring state in Pennsylvania does, and it's a very popular, strong tradition down there to go down with the muzzleloader and hunt that season. So
that's a
flintlock.
traditional.
Yeah.
And I don't think they should do that. I mean, the whole idea behind this season was to get people together, families. And I certainly support that. My personal feeling on the season, it really doesn't matter to me because I don't hunt Southern Zone. I'm from my job, I'm out there listening to what different people have to say and trying to analyze what might happen in a situation. So when I say that I see conflicts with the snowmobile club, I'm just saying that I envision conflicts with snowmobile clubs.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's right or it's wrong. I'm just, I can see that happening. And you're probably right. It probably will be localized. It's not going to happen every year. And DEC ran their own studies and it looked at snowfall rates, and that's how that went into their decision to make this happen. Now, the snowmobile club, I talked with the president of the New York State Snowmobile Association, and he said, when I quoted him in the article, that their snowfall data is a little different. Again, they're going to hold a season. It's been decided. So now we're going to have to wait and see. I don't know. DEC does not say that they're doing this to, from a population standpoint, they're not doing this to try to harvest more deer, but I think it still could be used as a tool for that. If it could be mixed in with something else, especially in a certain area where they want to lower populations, they could, issue more permits there or something like that, to encourage people to hunt a particular area during that season. So I can, although they say it's not intended to be a management tool, I could see it being used as that in the future. But again, I'm not for or against it. I'm just, it was a big topic and it was an interesting topic, and it's going to continue to be.
Yeah. So your feeling is that, so my personal assumption was that, and you're right. I mean, I guess thinking back to reading about it, it was, geared towards that, getting family together and, some of an event, you have a lot of people home for the holidays. You might have college kids are out of school at that point, so they might be more apt to go get their license. But I was thinking more along the lines of they want to harvest more deer. So that's the purpose of that. But you're feeling that it is definitely more directed at the kind of the family, more opportunity type discussion.
That is exactly that's DEC's number one point for putting this together. And I believe it came from pretty high up in the organization, or the agency, I should say.
Yeah.
And that was the number one goal. And that makes sense. I mean, we have a young man who started hunting with us about 3 years ago when he was in high school. He's now a cadet at West Point, and he didn't get to hunt this year. But they let these guys for the holidays. So this coming year, he'll be able to hunt. I mean, I think back when I was in college, how much hunting I missed, and it drove me crazy when I was away at school. I mean, it killed me not to be home on weekends to chase deer around,
Yeah.
And I would say, wow, now I'm going home for Christmas. Maybe I can get someplace in the Southern Zone where I could hunt. If I was a young kid now who wanted to hunt and was missing hunting time, I would see it as an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So, I try to look at everything from all perspectives. I have to. But even though I have my own opinions, my biggest thing that came into my mind when that was announced was I could see it conflicting with snowmobile clubs. And I think it's gonna sooner or later. And is that justification to not have it? I can't say that it is or not, but it's just something that I foresaw and foresee happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think people get, some of the comments I see on these different groups and whatnot, people are fired up like, oh, the last thing we need is more pressure on the deer and this and that. And, I think some of that is just so insular and looking at it is that it's bigger than that. And you as the hunter have the choice as to whether you're they're not putting a gun to your head and saying, you must hunt for this week of the year. It's like, you can stop. Like if you don't want your property to be pressured during that period and you don't want to participate, then don't. But I'll tell you what I kind of look at this, and I've been saying to my buddies, is that I'm kind of optimistic that what I might end up doing with having the ability to hunt that week, it's extremely slow for me at work during that period of time. And I can maybe lax a little bit on my hunting in the first week or two of December and not pressure my home life and everything else. And then come the time when my wife's off of work and I'm off of work and there's more opportunity, and there may even be some snow on the ground. You know, we didn't have snow until the last couple of days of season this year.
Right.
And I really depend. I love to get out and still hunt and follow tracks. That's like my favorite thing to do with a gun in my hand. And that might just give me an opportunity to say, you know what, it's the last week of November or it's the first week of December, and there's no benefit to me going out and trouncing around bare ground right now. I'm going to wait until my opportunity comes at the end of season when I've got that last 5, 6, 7 days where the deer have switched their patterns. They're coming to food. They're more consistent. They haven't been pressured for the better part. I mean, let's think about it. You go out and hunt right now in muzzleloader season, it's like a ghost town. Most hunters go out, and I know we have a long gun season, but most hunters hunt the first 2 weeks and through Thanksgiving. And then you go out there and you sit in the woods. And if you hear a few gunshots a day, that's it. You know, it's not 30 days of nonstop just dumping them. You know, it's not that. So I know that the seasons are that long, but the pressure isn't that intense, I don't believe.
I really enjoy muzzleloading hunting. It's probably my favorite, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And we have an early muzzleloading season in the northern zone, which I really enjoy. Even though when I had my old job, I was so ingrained, I had a lot of time off, and I'd take a week. I used to take that week quite often, and sometimes it was 70 degrees and it just got to be too warm. But I wrote a blog post on New York Outdoor News on outdoornews.com/New York about what it would have been like if we had that season this year. I was kind of analyzing the weather, and I can't remember it all in my head right now, but I'm pretty sure it was really nice right around Christmas. I know it was warm, and I think what I was saying, I think that first 4 or 5 days or 3 or 4 days would have been some pretty nice hunting. And then we had some inclement weather a little bit around New Year's Day, right around New Year's, which would have not been so good, you know?
Yeah.
So I was just kind of analyzing what it would have been like if we had the season. You know, this is what it would have been like to be in the woods that week. It would have been fall-like, you know.
Yeah.
It would have been pretty good. And you know, just one more thing about that. I spoke with Jeremy Hurst quite a bit about it when the proposal was on the table. He's the big game leader in New York State with DC, and we were talking about winter yarding areas. And obviously this is a southern zone thing, not a northern zone. And he was saying there's very few areas in the southern zone where deer actually yard up. It doesn't happen a lot. Maybe the Alleghenies, some of the Catskills, but for the most part in the agricultural country, the deer are just wherever they are because they're following the food, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I see that locally. I mean, I had 7 deer here in my yard yesterday. I live in an area, even though I'm in the Adirondacks, it's pretty populated around here and there's a lot of deer. You go 10 miles up the road into the Lake George Wild Forest, 1,000 feet more in elevation, different story. Much more barren, much less food. But again, it's like a southern zone comparison. Here, the deer don't leave the area. They kind of hunker down nearby. I start seeing them now more in the spring, but that's what Jeremy Hurst was saying, was that they really didn't see conflicts with deer winter yarding associated with having this season. I don't know if you ever heard, but probably about 8 or 10 years ago, this happened in the northern zone in Benson near Northville, near Great Sacandaga. Right there, you have a couple of wildlife management units that are the heart of the Adirondacks does not have a late black powder season, whereas a lot of the WMUs around the exterior of the Adirondacks do. Well, there's a area over there in Benson where basically everyone knew the deer were wintering there, and there was a late black powder season, and people were coming from all over to shoot these deer. It was fish in a barrel.
Wow.
And these are deer that had migrated from who knows how far away, you know, I mean, these deer could have migrated 20, 30 miles, you know. So you're shooting a deer that lives most of its life in another, you know, in an entirely different area. So all DEC did there was they adjusted the boundary of that WMU so that that particular area is closed for late black powder season. That's how they handled that. But
That's interesting.
that's quite a fiasco. I mean, I heard reports of people from Connecticut coming to hunt those deer.
Oh
I
shit.
mean, they were just driving up there, going over a ridge in snow up to their knees and shooting a deer and then busting their tails to get it out. But there were a lot of deer killed in that situation. And nobody wants to see that. Nobody wants, and will you? Who can say? But again, Hearst's prognosis was that probably won't happen.
Yeah, it makes good sense. And we saw a little bit of quote unquote yarding happening down here, you know, especially at the end of February, beginning of March, before we got this warm up, because we had, you know, 3-4 feet in some areas, especially in the lake effect bands. We were getting lake effect all the way through February, and you know, the deer just kind of naturally start congregating in certain areas. But yeah, unless you have some ridiculous weather in November and December, you don't see that down here in the southern zone at all. So next was the crossbow. What's your, from the reader feedback, it seems to me like a lot of this is emotional. Like people don't want to let go of what they feel is the true archery season, you know, and allowing crossbows to be used all throughout that period. And that's what's being suggested, is that crossbow be a legal weapon to be used throughout the whole archery season, correct?
Well, what this will do is put it first. The first thing that would happen is it would put the management of the crossbow in DEC's hands. Okay, right now it's in legislators' hands.
Okay.
So it would give DEC the authority to regulate crossbow usage, which would probably result, most people feel, in the crossbow being used during the entire archery season. So that's what's on the table, along with the junior hunting bill.
Yeah, and is it, and a lot of the pushback from people seems to be that they're concerned that with more people being able to use crossbow, with hunters being able to use crossbow throughout the entire archery season, potentially, that there'd be more deer shot, there'd be more people taking longer. Like, it seems like that's the concern. It's not like it, to me, it just doesn't seem like it holds water. You know, to me, I don't care if a crossbow is going to help somebody get out there and have confidence and make an ethical shot and kill a deer. If that's what they're comfortable with, I have no issue with it. I don't think it's going to drive the harvest up that much, or it's not going to change, you know, somebody showing up on your property and shooting it. Like, I don't know. I just don't see where people are getting so upset about this. It goes back to like the holiday hunt. It's like, you don't have to use a crossbow. It doesn't make it that you have to do something. It's just making it so that it's an option for people.
I ran a really interesting commentary, at least I felt, that came from the Professional Sportsman's Foundation. We ran that, I believe, in the March 5th issue. And it wasn't saying yes or no to crossbows. It was just this national organization analyzing how the crossbow was used in all 50 states. And one, it's a management tool. So that's an issue we have in areas of New York State, not everywhere in New York State, but it's a population management tool. But mainly it's a way to keep people in the woods. And in my column that I wrote in that same issue, March 5th, I talked about how 20 some odd years ago I was diagnosed with gluten intolerance. It's a food allergy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 240 pounds now. I was 140 pounds then.
Wow.
You know, I was really sick, and now I'm probably more weight than I need. I guess, you know, that's a whole different story. But I couldn't even pull my bow back, you know, and I was really scared. And the diagnosis was a good. I go back to people who used to be able to bow hunt and who can't anymore. And I'm not saying the crossbow should just be for disabled, but it starts there, at least in this state. If this passes, those are the people that are going to benefit immediately. Okay. a guy that used to be able to bow hunt, knows how to archery hunt, understands the limitations of bow hunting, and that's the most important thing. I don't care whether you're shooting a compound or a recurve or a crossbow. You need to understand your limitations and the limitations of your equipment. And I don't know. I don't agree with long shots. A lot of people take them because they can, but I just think there's a big margin for error there myself. I know there is with me anyways.
Yeah.
So even with my crossbow, maybe 40 yards in an open field, but in the woods, definitely inside 30, that's me with a crossbow. And I have a pretty good crossbow. It's brand new. It's a really nice 10-point that I got in 2014. And I got it specifically because I knew I was going to be writing about the crossbow and I wanted to understand what was all going on. So I got my hands on one. It was a loaner from 10-point. I could have sent it back. I liked it so much I paid for it and bought it. And I hunt the northern zone. We only get 3 days right now before muzzleloading season. Yes, I have the choice of keeping my crossbow instead of my muzzleloader, but I muzzleloader hunting. So I would like a little more time personally with the crossbow before muzzleloading season. I'd love to be out there opening day, which is when the early days of archery are your best time to connect on any deer if you're just trying to put a little meat in the freezer. My experience with my local deer herd is that they go nocturnal real quick, even with just a little bit of bow hunting pressure, from me and my nephew and a couple other guys that hunt around here. Once 3 days into archery season, their movements change. And, but I'm not saying that's justification for the crossbow. I'm just saying I would probably use it more. I might not use it in a tree stand so much. Right now, I tend to use it more in a ground blind. So I think my tree stand hunting, I'd still probably be using my compound more on a regular basis. But getting back to the justification for it, you have these, there's a lot of people that aren't hunting right now that could be. And I think that's where it would start in New York. These guys that used to be bow hunters and girls would be able to get back in the woods during archery season. Our gun hunters who don't bow hunt currently maybe going to take up the crossbow, probably. Somebody's going to get one under their Christmas tree, and you're going to see some of that, I'm sure. How it will affect the harvest, I don't know, but I'll go back to that Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation article, and they mostly compared Wisconsin, and they found very little difference, if I'm referencing the article correctly, because it all becomes archery. You're still slinging a arrow at a deer with a string. Granted, it's a bow that's on a gun stock, but again, it comes down to people knowing the limitations. And I don't think the crossbow, other than its ability to learn to shoot it quicker, is much more dangerous or lethal at killing a deer as a bow is in terms of quality of the projectile.
Right.
Once that arrow is in the air, or bolt, whatever you want to call it, I don't think the crossbow is any better or any worse than a compound. It's obviously easier to learn to shoot a crossbow. I mean, that's for sure. There's no question there. There are some things people need to know. They need to be safe. It can be intimidating. It's cumbersome to carry. You can't really sling it over your shoulder with it when it's cocked and loaded. You got to carry it like this, and they're heavy and they're bulky. It's not like carrying my recurve on a stalk hunt.
Right.
So it's not, the crossbow isn't this solution to all of your archery hunting problems. It's not. It's just another weapon.
Right.
And it's going to be easier for some people to use than others.
And you hear people, one of the sentiments saying, well, just make it so that if you have some sort of a health issue or you're over a certain age, you can get permission to use a crossbow. And to me, that's just a barrier to entry. And I think that's one of the things I'm seeing the DEC especially over the last year doing, is they're really reducing the barriers of entry to get people into hunting. And we saw that with the hunter education, making it online so that people could do it from their homes when they couldn't go out and physically have an in-person. I mean, look at how many people it added to our community just in 1 year. So I think it's great. I think that people have the ability to make their own choices and make it easy for people to make that choice and not, have to jump through hoops to get certified or, meet some criteria. It's like, if you want to use it, if it's legal and within the bounds, go right ahead.
At the end of the day, I'm for anything that puts more hunters in the woods.
Yep.
You know, and I understand that I might find competition on some of the public land I hunt. I understand that, but you know, this sport, this heritage of hunting, we need everybody we can get. You know, we need participation. We need the next generation, and we need the elder generation. I mean, we've got a guy that hunts with us that didn't start hunting. He's the grandfather of the Army cadet. He didn't hunt for 25 years, and he's back with us now. And you know, R3, one of the R's is reactivate.
Yeah.
And it's right there with the crossbow. You know, it's sitting. That's what it is.
Yep.
And
that holiday hunt fits right into that too. You know, reactivation.
Putting more people in the woods and giving more people an opportunity to experience hunting. I mean, I understand the desire to want to kill a big deer. I understand the desire to. I know there's a lot of ego involved with hunting at times, and I've been there. When I was younger, it was more important to me to get a deer, to kill a big deer. It's not anymore. You know, seeing deer, having a good time. Yeah, I get frustrated when I don't see deer. I want to see deer when I hunt, you know, and if I go up here without seeing a deer, I'm like, hey, what's going on here? You know?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I'm happy to be able to get out there in the morning and get out and climb these mountains I climb at my age and do the things I do. I'm grateful for that, you know. And I think everybody goes through those stages with hunting. And some of our younger guys probably are more interested in their own success, and they don't want to, you know, if they may see other hunters as competition. And I'm not saying that happens with all of them or it's across the board, but I went through that phase myself. That's why I'm saying, because there was a time when I wanted to do what I wanted to do, you know, and I didn't want anybody bothering me. And I was more in when I went hunting, I thought, boy, I hope I get a deer today, you know, and now I don't even think like that. Now I'm just like, if it happens, it happens.
Yeah.
You know, but it's these issues, people have the reasons for feeling the way they do. And I'm not gonna undermine anybody's feelings. If somebody's strongly against the crossbow, they have a reason for it. And I'm not gonna just say that they're selfish, because I don't know what they're thinking. You know, some of them feel like they've done a lot of work to become the accomplished archers that they are, and they feel others should do the same. That's how they feel. You know, that's and I'm not going to say that they're right or they're wrong, but I've heard that come from that side quite a bit. And does that mean they're justified to have 6 weeks of hunting with nobody else in the woods? I don't know about that either.
Right. Yep. Yeah. And that goes back to the discussion I had with Todd last week on the podcast is, you know, just because that's how you feel doesn't mean you have to force your opinions and your ideas on others. You know, as long as we can all have a conversation about this. And, you know, I love what he said. It goes back to values. You know, for you just kind of talked about your values of what's important to you when you get out in the woods every day. It's not necessarily wrapping a tag around a huge Adirondack buck. It's getting out there and enjoying the experience. And it's icing on the cake if you can notch that tag and wrap it around some horn. You know, so it's important to have those discussions, and it's important to understand that not everybody's in the same boat that you are. And it's fine to express your feelings, but don't expect that everybody's going to have the same feelings or, you know, not disagree with what you're saying. So,
yeah. And the biggest thing is so many people, boy, if somebody doesn't agree with them, they're the enemy, you know? Yeah. And again, I mean, as a writer, it's my job to listen to what other people have to say. And I've tried to be, over the years, I've really tried to listen, go beyond what somebody has to say, and try and realize that there's a reason they feel the way they feel, you know. And but at the same time, you can't just hate. It's like politics, you know. You can't just hate somebody because they're of a different political belief than you, you know. And I've said this before. Whatever happened to the old days of just having a beer and a cup of coffee and disagreeing on politics, you know?
Well, we can't do that anymore.
You know?
No.
And we can't, and it's the same way with this crossbow and issue and a few other things, just dividing everybody. Yeah. And I'm not saying we're ever going to come together on everything. We've been down this road with antler restrictions. We've been down this road with a few other things over the years. And, you know, again, this one guy attacked me, and I printed his letter. I had no problem printing his letter, but he just disagrees with everything I said about the crossbow, and he probably hates me for it and whatever. I mean, I can't his feelings, but why are you so strongly against anybody who disagrees with you? I'm not. It's fine to disagree with me. And again, we can shake hands. Well, we can't shake hands during COVID, but we can shake hands and agree to disagree. You know, at the end of the day, we're all deer hunters. You know,
Right.
That's where we stand for something. And I come back to the whole sport or heritage or whatever you want to call it of hunting, the fraternity. You know, we're a Fortune 500 company if you put us all together as a whole, hunting and fishing. Think about what we could do if we all just came together. We could call our own shots. We could call our own shots on gun control. We could call our own shots on wildlife management. We could be the ones telling the politicians the way it's going to be. But we're never going to come together. I mean, you look at fishermen, it's the same thing. You know, you got the guys who, I don't know, you got people who are fly fishermen who only use a nip, the top water nip, and anybody uses a lure doesn't know what they're doing.
Right.
You know, and I don't care. Have a good time, fish how you want to fish. And, you know, but some people are so strong, believe so strongly in that they do is the only thing. And I'll come back to archery, and I'm not knocking somebody who's strictly traditional, but I know a lot of guys who are traditional archers who will never pick up a compound or a crossbow. You know, they're just not going to do it. You know, me, I got a recurve, I got a compound, I got a crossbow. I like using all three of them, you know, and I will use all three of them during the course of every season. And I have since 2014.
Yeah. And what you just said, you know, about the fraternity of outdoors enthusiasts, you know, hunters, fishers, etc. You know, we gotta come together, and I think it's discussions like this and every other one I'm hearing. It's been a very, very popular topic on podcasts over the last 2-3 weeks. You know, a lot of guys and girls are talking about that, and it's super important to have these discussions and try to open up the lines of communication and make people understand that, you know, we do need to come together, because we do have a voice, but if we're all divided over these little petty things, you know, it's not going to move us forward in any direction. And it all comes back to ego. You know, I was listening to, I'm a big fan of Jocko Willink. I don't know if you know who Jocko is, but he's a retired Navy SEAL. He's a writer. He's a podcaster, business, has a business where he works with businesses to help their leaders. And, you know, he just had a marathon of a podcast with Tulsi Gabbard, which with Tulsi was a candidate for the Democratic nomination for president. And the big thing that he started out his discussion talking about was ego. And almost every issue that there is in any group, organization, everything comes down to ego. And it's like, why? You know, like I think about hunting and just our little niche group. It's like, at the end of the day, you know, you shot a 150-inch buck. Good for you. Like, what does that do for anything? Like, it doesn't make you better than your neighbor. It just means you had a 150-inch buck walk in front of you. And, you know, there's people that, do I want to shoot a 150-inch buck? Amen. I would love to shoot one every year, but they don't exist in my backyard every year. You might get one every 10 years, you know, and,
Exactly.
and it's the journey to it. To killing that buck, whether it's a 2.5-year-old, whether it's a spike, or whether it's a 150-inch giant, you know, it's the journey to get there. That once you can get to that point where you experience the journey and how much fun it is to see it all come together, you know, whether it's managing the habitat on your property or scouting or everything that goes with it, you start appreciating the whole process a heck of a lot more. And I think the more that you talk about it, the more that people, you know, however it is that you get yourself to that point as a hunter or as an angler, you know, with whatever your passions are on that end of things, once you get yourself to the point where you can look at the process more than the process in the community, more than you look at your individual success, I think that's what will help us move forward as a group collectively.
I agree. I mean, I hunt with a group of guys, and we hunt for each other. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's when, you know, again, we make deer drives, and there was quite a stir up around that for a while in our letters section. But that's the way we've done it for years. We run around the Adirondacks making deer drives, and it's just the way we've hunted. And yeah, I could probably kill more bucks if I was just going to go sit on a scrape or a rub line that I found. You know, there's a lot of times when I've walked through the woods, especially in some of the remote places I've gone, and say, boy, what would happen if I just came and sat here all day? You know?
Right.
You know, but I'm not a good sitter, but we just enjoy hunting together. I mean, some of us are related, some of us are just friends, and we just have a good time. That's all I can say. It's fun, and we killed a buck almost every weekend this year, and it was fun to have that type of consistency, you know. And it didn't really matter who pulled the trigger. There's no control over. You can't say, "Hey, Dan, you're up," you know, or
Right.
Bob, it's your turn. Hunting doesn't work that way. The deer dictate what's going to happen.
Exactly.
You know? It's either one of the old timers I have always says, when it's your day, it's your day. And that's how it works.
Yep.
You know,
And that's the beauty of it. I mean, our one of the guys in our group, Brian, we call him Trigger because he's the master behind the trigger, and he shot his biggest buck of his life, whitetail of his life, a 150-inch buck out of Pennsylvania. And it was such a unique deal because we ended up connecting with a writer, Ralph Schurter. I don't know if you heard the name Ralph Schurter, but he's got his own website. He's an outdoor writer in Pennsylvania. And, Ralph had been hunting that deer for multiple years. And a mutual friend of ours that Ralph's friends with and we're friends with, realized when he saw the picture of the buck, he's like, oh my God, that's the deer that Ralph's been after and he's been writing about for a couple of years now. And just the
shake his hand.
Yeah, we had him on the podcast, and it was just, we had such a good time talking with him, and he shared the whole backstory on the deer. And Brian shot that buck. Brian was a pusher. We had no idea. We do the same thing. We go down there and we do these 10, 15 hunter pushes down there in the valleys and the mountains, and you had no idea who was going to do that. But as soon as you heard those gunshots ring, it's a celebration, and you don't know who it is. And when you do find out, you're just ecstatic. Of course you would love to be the person that had that buck run in front of you, but your day will come. If you stay out there and you keep putting the work in, you'll get the opportunity. So
that's my biggest story. I mean, and I don't want to dwell on this because I know you want to get to other topics, but in the 90s when I was working a lot, I didn't have a lot of vacation time. And that's when I was all about me. I wanted to get a deer so bad. I had a drought, and one of the things was I would I've been a musician my whole life, and I used to play in bands, and weekends I'd be playing out in clubs and whatever, and that impacted my hunting. Long story short, well, after I got diagnosed with this gluten thing, it was right around the time I was giving up playing in a band, and I just started working alone as a singer and guitar player, never playing during deer season except for maybe Halloween or Thanksgiving. And with my job, started having more time off. Bottom line, started putting more time into hunting. The last 20 years has been much more productive than the 20 years prior in terms of my hunting success. If more time you spend in the woods, the more your opportunities are going to increase, as long as you're at least making an effort to put yourself where there's some deer.
Yep.
So that's, I've always said there's something to be said for hard work, and I do believe if you work hard at it, and part of that work is strategizing and trying to figure out, what's happening with the deer in the area you're hunting, and then you're actually out there in the woods with the boots on the ground, you're going to have success. Really, you're going to have the chance to have success. You still got to make the shot.
Yeah, you got to make the shot, and you got to hope
that's the other part.
And you got to hope that they read the script, right? So the last thing, and there's really no discussion to be had because it's a no-brainer. The lowering of the age, I love it. I'm very excited about it. I think you see other states are well below the age limit here in New York, and I think it's great that they've, over the last maybe 10 years, they've made adjustments to that, going from 16 to 14 different scenarios, and being able to hunt archery at a younger age too. So now having them moving it down to 12, I think is great. And I can't wait for all the kids around us to, both my nieces and nephews and my kids to be able to get to that point. It just makes it a little bit shorter of a road. And I can't see anything but the positives to come from that.
Absolutely. Have you ever been with a kid on a youth hunt?
Turkey, yes. Never on the deer side. I don't have anybody around me close that's in that young age at this point, but we have several.
You ever see these young guys?
What's that?
You ever see these young kids when you ever see these young kids when they get their first deer or their
Yeah.
first turkey?
I've seen videos
I mean,
of it. Yeah.
I don't have children, you know. I live vicariously through all my friends who have kids and have for so many years. And even this year, I took a young boy, 14 years old, out during the youth deer hunt, and we didn't have any luck. But this kid was excited. He was excited. I mean, he was coming out of his skin, you know, just excited. I couldn't sit him still. I couldn't keep him still. He was 14. I can't imagine a 12-year-old, you know.
Right.
And I want to do it. I look forward to doing it. And a couple of years ago, you know, I got a kid a turkey, and it was great. I mean, it was fantastic. And I don't know anybody who criticizes the youth. If you do, then that's really selfish, you know.
Yeah.
Worried about more hunters in the woods because of us lowering the youth age, then I'm going to go ahead and say you're pretty selfish. But
Yeah.
but I am I am all for lowering the hunting age, and I wouldn't even care if they left it up to the parent to decide. You know, if the kid can pass a hunter education class, you know, let him go hunting. You know,
Yeah.
that's and I'm all for, you know, we got to get the kids in younger. I know we say that all the time, and it's true. And once it's in them, it's hard to get it out of them. You know,
Yep.
and I'm living proof of that. You know, my life changed when I was a young boy, and my dad started taking care of a hunting camp. You know, I'm the youngest of 5 kids, 2 older brothers who were, you know, probably had a better relationship with my dad up to that point in my life, and they had moved on and grown up. And then I started going to the hunting camp with my dad. I was basically the camp boy, you know, fetching firewood and fetching water and all that stuff. And it was an experience. It's paved the way for everything I do now.
Yep.
You know.
Yeah. And we're
I
whichever.
wish every kid could have.
Oh,
every kid could have that experience.
No doubt. And it's just opening that door over the opportunity. And, you know, I think there's a ton of people out there who they got that taste. You know, I can speak for myself personally. I faded away from hunting throughout my high school years and into college because I just had so much going on. But my dad had my brother and I in his hip pocket all, you know, as soon as we were 4 years old, we were in the ground blind hunting with him. You know, it wasn't like an every time thing, but we were out there. And, you know, I'll never forget those memories. They're so vivid in my mind. And that's what ended up bringing me back to this lifestyle once all the sports and college activities and everything else were behind me. It's like that was who I was outside of those things. You know, it was being a hunter and a fisherman. So yeah, it's great. And I'm excited that the state's moving forward with that stuff.
And I really hope that they look at that more than anything. I mean, I told you about the poll we had on the website. My vote was to lower the hunting age. I mean, yes, I support the crossbow, and I'm okay with the changing of this, you know, the hunting hours. But if I had to pick one, it would be the kids.
Yep.
You know, that's for sure.
No doubt.
Because I've seen it, and there's nothing like it. I mean, and even some of our young kids, you know, I got a cousin who's 21 years old, and he killed his first buck with us. I think he was 15 or 16. And this kid just eats, sleeps, and breathes deer hunting and guns and, you know, duck hunting. And I think he's getting a bird dog as we speak, to be honest with you.
Nice.
But when he gets a buck, it's great because he's the one that's excited. I mean, he's shaky and he gets all, you know, it's fun to see. And then one of his high school friends who's been hunting with us a little bit, we got him a beautiful 6-pointer opening day this year. This was a nice 18-inch spread 6-pointer. It just didn't have any brow tines.
Yeah.
This was a nice buck. It weighed 173, I think.
Damn.
We dragged it close to 2 miles, 5 of us. And
You guys are crazy. You guys are crazy.
It was on state land, you know, and the Adirondacks, and we were out as far in. He had to shoot it at 1:00 in the afternoon. you're about as far in as you're going to go that day to where you start to hunt your way out.
Right.
And he got this buck, and this kid was just lit up. Here's a 20-year-old kid, 21-year-old kid, just excited because he's killed a couple of smaller bucks in the southern zone, but this was special to him, and it was just great. It was awesome. I would take experiences like that every day. I like a deer and everything. That's nice, but to see these kids get them like that, it's great. It's just
awesome.
I can't put a price tag on it. And so take that 21 and reverse it and make it 12, and it just I just can't imagine.
Yep.
And when I see these pictures from other states, some 7-8-year-old kid shooting a big deer, or just getting a doe or a turkey or something like that, especially something on the big game side. I'm not taking anything away from small game. Kids get out, they hunt pheasants, they hunt grouse and squirrels. That's awesome. I mean, I was a squirrel killer when I was 14. I was a madman running around the woods with my brothers, cousins and stuff, trying to kill squirrels. It was my passion. But big game is where it's at in terms of that rite of passage, I think. And when a kid kills a deer or a turkey, I think they feel like they crossed that, and that's important at that age to cross that. And I think that's what kind of cements the bond. That's one of those things.
Agreed. Okay, I think we're ready for the juicy stuff.
I thought we were in the juicy stuff.
Yeah, well, that's
How's our time?
What's that?
How's our time?
I'm fine if you're fine. I don't really care how long the discussion goes. So I want to talk in the paper. I think I got it last week, last Wednesday or Thursday. You had quite a bit in there about the stuff that's going on within the state with suggested legislation in the firearm and gun regulation. So I wanted to kind of talk to you a little bit on that. As I mentioned at the beginning of this discussion, I was chatting with Nate, trying to figure out who'd be a good person to talk to. And you're certainly looking at it from a reporting perspective, but you also have a personal, we all have a personal interest as hunters of, protecting our Second Amendment rights. So I wanted to kind of just have a discussion with you to kind of enlighten some of the listeners if they're not paying attention to this and understanding what's going on in that realm. So I don't know where you want to start with that.
Well, one thing that's changed since that article was written. Right now, there's probably more emphasis on federal legislation than there is state legislation. The House just passed 2 bills. I don't have the email in front of me. I want to say HR 8 and 214. Don't quote me on that, but they're out there. I mean, and we'll be talking about them in a future issue. One of them is basically the federal's version of the background checks. Another one, I believe, is the one that will extend the background checks from 3 to 10 days. And there's some other, and I haven't even had a chance to fully read these yet, but be alerted that they're out there, and I believe they have passed the House, this in Congress. So they're going to head to the Senate. So we need 51 senators to, really understand. And I tell you what's a good resource is a guy named Jim Shepard, the Outdoor Wire, and he just wrote an op-ed about it this morning. And I just read that this morning, and he was just saying, what's the intent here? Bad intent, I think, was the title of his article. And he was kind of summarizing those bills. Plus, there's obviously the third one that's out there that everyone's been talking about, which is, mental checks for people in your household if you own a gun. I mean, basically, they want to take everything to do with owning a gun and just make it a pain in the neck. So those 3 items, especially the 2 that have passed the United States Assembly, those are what you probably want to look at right now. The state, yes, those bills are on the table. I think we got to get through the budget process first before we hear anything on them. And if there's any turmoil with the governor, you might not, and this is me being hopeful. I don't want to wish bad things on anybody, but if the governor's scandal continues, I've got a feeling that there might be bigger fish to fry in New York than gun legislation, because, let's just assume he didn't have going on. he probably, I don't think he's ever met a gun bill that he doesn't like. So
Right.
he would probably sign something that came to his desk. And this is just me thinking here that maybe with everything going on, they might back off some of that type of stuff and focus on the more important issues, financial, probably
Right.
healthcare, COVID, those type of things that might make more sense. Just again, just as what we just went through this past year. So I'm hoping that maybe some of the gun legislation that's been proposed mostly by the anti-gun folks won't get any legs. I'm hoping so. I think right now, that article I wrote surmise on some of those. There's a list every year that comes up. The New York State Rifle and Pistol Association, SCOPE, and New York State Conservation Council all keep track of those. So I would definitely suggest anybody monitor them through them, as well as anything that we continue to write. Those three groups. And the Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation has an excellent tool online. And I put that in that article, and I also put it on a blog post out on NewYorkOutdoorNews.com with a link to it, where you can go and you can basically create your own search. So it's not just gun legislation, it's anything to do with wildlife. There's a couple of anti-trapping bills out there. This is New York stuff, and you can track these in any state. So that is the best way to be proactive with this stuff, is to just keep on top of it. And we certainly will in the paper for sure. But everybody needs to do this on their own as well. But again, I think right now, for the time being, the focus is on the budget in the state, but at the national level, those two gun bills are definitely concerning.
Yeah. And I'm going to be honest. I've never been a member of an organization, like a nonprofit, or, whether it's the NRA or something. I've never been a member of those organizations that are out there, supposedly fighting for our rights as gun owners and to protect the Second Amendment. And it just seems like it's a good time to be a member of one of those organizations, but I'm not quite sure. You see what you see in the news about the NRA, and I'm not quite understanding. I know they've relocated, and there was bankruptcy issues here in New York, but I mean, like, who you mentioned a few organizations there that are monitoring this and working closely on these issues, but I mean, is there anybody that you personally recommend that somebody belongs to? Because that's kind of aside from sending emails to your representatives and getting involved on these issues and being up to date, it is important to be a member of an organization that is speaking for you at these things and, sending you emails and keeping you up to date.
SCOPE, and I can't, they're a state organization, and I can't think of what the acronym stands for. And the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association are both obviously pro-gun organizations in New York. I'm not going to tell anybody to join or not join. What I'll tell you to do is research them and then decide for yourself. I won't lie. They can use any support they can get. The New York State Conservation Council, I think, is doing a great job at reinventing themselves right now. And they're not just involved with gun issues, they're involved with all issues. So they do track gun legislation. They do have people in Albany. They basically restructured their operating, their whole operating infrastructure, where they don't have an office anymore. They hired a girl to do virtual stuff. They're saving a lot of money. They're able to channel that money into other areas. They're certainly an organization that I think every sportsman should support some way or the other, whether it's involvement or financial. Again, I'm not going to tell you to join an organization, but I will encourage you to research them and decide for yourself. National level, I mean, think what you want to think about the NRA. There's a lot going on there. I listen to Gun Talk Radio a lot. Tom Gresham, he's the son of Grits Gresham, who used to be the American Sportsman's area for years. And Tom really has his handle, in my opinion, has a handle on what's going on with gun stuff. And he does a podcast, a radio show every Sunday, and then you can stream it afterwards, and just guntalkradio.com. And he probably does as good a job of keeping track of this stuff as anybody, on his Twitter accounts, on his Facebook page, on the website, obviously, but the podcast is really interesting to listen to. And the NRA, I don't know what's going to happen there, and it's tied to New York because of the fact that they were established in New York. I know the Attorney General wants to take them down, and I disagree with that. Can the NRA do some things to help itself? I believe they could. Another group that really seems to be getting a lot of attention and is doing a lot for gun owners across the country is the Second Amendment Foundation, because they actually take it to the courts, so they can obviously use support. I wish they'd come to New York and sue over the SAFE Act, but that's a whole different story.
Right.
But they're pretty active. I mean, if you look them up, they've got a lot going on, and they go into states and sue. They get in with lawsuits, involved with lawsuits against types of gun legislation that they think is unconstitutional, and they've got a pretty good track record. And it's just one after another. I mean, it might be one thing in one state, one thing in another state, but those are the groups that come to mind. And there are others, but those are the ones that I keep track of. That I kind of monitor. But it's never ending, and it's and it's something you have to continuously keep on top of it if it's something that concerns you. You can't just say, well, the Heller decision 30 years ago took care of all that, because it's coming back around every time you change. Of course, we have definitely a minority now in both New York and at the federal level in terms of Republicans versus Democrats, and Democrats are by a rule anti-gun, but not all of them are. I mean, I know pro-gun Democrats, and I know some Republicans who haven't really been favorable towards the Second Amendment. So that's a tough call. And again, I'm not going to tell anybody to affiliate with any political party, but that's the way it is right now. And I think the anti-gun crowd sees that as an opportunity. So that's the reality of it, what will happen, I don't know. Again, I'll circle back to the problems the governor's having, and I'm kind of thinking that might detour some things at the state level. Maybe not, but I'm kind of thinking that way. I think right now, for the next couple of weeks, other than the budget, the people might want to focus on what's going on at the national level and write their congressman.
Yep.
Gillibrand, Schumer, those type of people.
Yep. And I think this is a very similar discussion to the concern about losing hunting rights and privileges and everything else. It's, we are in the same user group as, or special. We as hunters, most of us are gun owners as well. And you may not see the concern of the background checks or the mental health thing, or banning of certain types of weapons or magazine capacity. You might see those as little issues, but if you start to see one thing go, and I never used to really understand the whole, I used to think it was kind of just fear mongering, the give an inch, they'll take a mile, or, death by 1,000 cuts type of principle. But
It will take a mile.
it's so true. And, we've seen it on the hunting side of things, and I think there's some great victories to be seen when we all come together. And, there's been some recent legislation proposed, and there was one in California. And I believe there's been stuff in other states like Montana recently where they're proposing major changes to different rules. California was banning of all bear hunting, and it spread around social media very quickly. And that bill got shut down within several days because they didn't realize, this was a politician out of a city center in California, a city jurisdiction that is not connected to that, felt that there wouldn't be much opposition. It's something they could pass forward. And hunters from all across the country stepped up and said, this is not right. We can't do this. And that's what we all need to do. And there's a lot of these organizations. I mean, it's amazing how many different organizations there are. At the end of the day, make sure that the organization aligns with you and what your goals are. But I find some of these groups do a great job of, they have pre-canned emails, and they send an email blast and they say, hey, please contact your representative. You click one button and it takes you right to your email, and you can easily send a message and just bombard your representatives with your feelings on these issues. And it's
So that's exactly what the New York State Crossbow Coalition is doing right now. And yes, I'm pro crossbow, but I'm certainly not trying to tell anybody to do that. But that's what they've set up for their infrastructure. If you want to write a congressman, they have it so it can go to once you punch in your zip code, it goes to your local people and it goes to the governor, and they're all the anti-group doing the same thing. And that's the whole thing. These anti-groups are pretty well organized, both anti-gun, anti-hunting. And that's what you have to keep an eye out for. You mentioned bear hunting in California. There's been New Jersey's a mess with bear hunting.
Yeah.
You got a governor who doesn't want you to hunt them on state lands. I mean, that's out of control.
Yeah, their bear population's out of hand.
Yeah, I mean, in Maine, they wanted to stop baiting. Now, I hate baiting when it comes to deer. I can't stand it. I would never support baiting. Just me personally, I would be against it.
Yeah.
I think to kill a deer, you don't need to put out a pile of food, But in Maine, baiting bears is how you hunt them. That's how it's traditional. And, they're trying to ban bear baiting. It's happened in the past, and the guides associations have to come forth and testify in front of Congress and stuff like that. So, again, keeping track of these organizations and what you want to belong to or support that's what's key, because the whole idea behind the antis is to chip away. I think a lot of them figure if we throw out 10 gun bills, well, maybe we'll pass 3. We can't pass any,
Right.
It's not a compromise because, like you said, they want to chip away. My biggest concern, I mean, I know the long-term goal of the anti-groups is to basically end it, period, whether it's gun ownership or hunting or whatever. But I'm very concerned about semi-automatic firearms. And that's where the AR platform comes into play. I don't own anything I don't own a modern sporting firearm. I just never own one. And now in New York, it's a hassle to own one. But to me, they're just a semi-automatic with some cosmetic things.
Yeah.
They're very popular, which is probably why they're used in mass shootings. They've been around since 1955. But at the end of the day, to me, they're a semi-automatic weapon. And if you start cracking down on them, and eventually it's going to move over to semi-automatics. So my Ruger 22 and your Ruger 22 and your Remington pump or your Remington semi,
Yeah.
even my Ithaca Mag 10, that's a semi. I mean, are these going to come under scrutiny because of these gun laws that could potentially be passed?
Right.
That's my concern, because it's eventually could affect hunting. And then after that, what happens when somebody uses a pump shotgun in a killing? They're going to come after pumps. It just keeps going.
It's going to keep going. Yeah.
And that's what they want. They want to chip away, and you can't. You got to meet them at the door.
Yep.
And
I think with that, when you're in those situations, I don't typically find myself in situations where I'm talking to somebody who's against firearms. I think that's a challenge that all of us have is that we're in circles of people that don't have those opposing views. But it's important, probably anyone's biggest platform is your social media platform, and is these Facebook groups. And Facebook is probably the worst of them all. Is you gotta be aware of what you're doing when you're posting pictures or posting videos, and it's not important to show everybody your arsenal, and it's not important to, show off how fast you can shoot your gun, or, when you take a picture with the deer you shot, make sure your gun's not pointed at you and that the chamber's open and it's clear. Like,
I just saw one of those yesterday.
Yeah. And it sucks because
right at the person.
Yeah. And it might be, and it might not be, but it looks like it. How many great pictures, of people that have got a deer or a bear or a turkey of something that they're super proud of, but they miss just that little piece. And that picture can be seen by somebody who's against what we do, and they can very quickly turn that into a negative instead of a positive. And
I've had many conversations over the years with people who are non-hunters and non-shooters. And one of the things that comes up, especially following mass shootings as well, can't can't we just ban this, or can't we got to do something? Can't we just do this, that? And I'm like, you don't understand. You don't know. First of all, they don't understand the agenda of the anti-hunting groups or the anti-shooting groups, anti-gun groups, because they're not part of them.
Right.
They're just looking at the process, and they see the same stuff you're seeing on Facebook. They see the posts that other people put out, and it helps. It raises the question in their mind, why do we need this? Why, and they come, why do you need a gun that holds 10 rounds? Why do you need this? Why do you need that? I said, well, if you start chipping away at this, they're going to take that, then they're going to move on to something else. And they're just, their agenda is to eventually take it all,
Yeah.
and you can't give up any ground, we just can't give up any ground. Not just so much on guns, but on wildlife, I mean, look at what's changed with trapping over the years, some of the regulations there. And I'm not a trapper, but now you started getting dogs walking parks, dogs getting in bear traps, and people, non-trappers, don't know how to handle them. The dog dies. It's a horrible thing.
Yikes. Yeah.
And now this is what trappers are dealing with, because that's the public, and that's the public side of it.
Yep.
And like you're saying with the Facebook examples, the public side is always going to be something that we have to deal with, because we are the minority.
Right.
And, we have to keep public support for hunting and shooting sports is important.
Yeah.
Really important.
Yeah. And it's, I think it all comes back. I pound it. It's education. It's talking about it, and it becomes a broken record. But if one person hears it and maybe turns the light bulb on in their head, or they read it, whether it's in a publication or whatever, about the proper, like when you're taking a picture, what's the proper, grip and grin, like just simple stuff. Like if you can impact it just in one person to reduce one awful picture, one awful look for us as shooters or hunters, etc., it's going to help us preserve this and try to stand up for what it is that we do in this lifestyle, which is 99% of people doing this are good. It's the 1% that always,
for the website over the years, I always no alcohol in any photos. And I always would ask people just to kind of keep the blood a little bit. I mean, you can't control all the blood, but
right.
You don't want like a bloodbath either.
Yeah. Don't take a picture with the gut pile next to the deer, or, if you can flip the deer over, or wipe it off with a leaf, or tuck the tongue in its mouth, it's just simple stuff, and it just showing respect to the animal. Exactly. It's not that hard, and it's how many times do you take a picture afterwards and you look back and you're like, damn it, I didn't get the picture I wanted. And it is what it is, but you don't have to post it if it's not tasteful and it's not going to be received well by people. So
I've seen people pictures of hearts with an arrow, where the arrow went through it. Here's the deer heart you can see where the broadhead went through the heart. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Was that necessary?
It
makes them feel good, I guess.
It makes them feel good, but it gets a lot of reaction, positive and negative. And I think that's what's driving people to do those things. But coming back around and kind of closing out, the whole gun talk and Second Amendment stuff, I think I wanted to talk about it with you. I know you'll be keeping up with it and continuing to report on it in the paper. And I just wanted to kind of hit on it a little bit. I think we covered some good thoughts there as far as what people should be doing to get involved, what they can do, and some of the things that are happening. So I appreciate you kind of giving us your insight on that.
Yep. My advice is stay informed and continue to communicate.
Yep. It's the key to everything, right? I definitely would. I've really enjoyed this chat. I definitely would like to get you back on here to talk a little bit about the Adirondack hunting side of things. We talked kind of big picture about a lot of stuff, but I'd love to. There's a bunch of you guys now that I'm hearing. I just I just did obviously a podcast with Todd last week. I got you on here. I am actually in the process of listening to an episode with Todd Mead. I'm sure you know Todd.
Yep, Todd's a good friend. Good friend.
So I'd heard that name, but I'd never heard him talk or really seen much of his stuff. And I really enjoyed listening to his conversation. So I'd love to. The Adirondack and the Bigwood stuff has been the most popular podcast we've done. We've only done a few of them on it, but the ones we have been huge hits. So I'll definitely
Yeah.
have to tap on you, and maybe it'd be fun to get kind of a little panel of you guys together to just kind of talk about the history of Adirondack hunting and the lifestyle of it. I think that'd be really entertaining.
That's my wheelhouse. The camp life, the different styles. I mean, it's and I'm not putting it on a pedestal above anything else. It's just we're fortunate to have this resource up here. 6 million acres, over 3 million of it of public land to hunt, and there's a lot of room to stretch your legs, and we're fortunate to have it right in our backyard, and anybody can come here and hunt. I mean, that's what I've done over the years is help a lot of people get up to this country and do their thing and have their own experience. And most of them that come here aren't looking for a big buck; they're looking for the experience.
Yep.
It's like none other. It's a Northeast big woods hunting in general is great. Vermont, New Hampshire. I've hunted up in Maine. New York. That whole corridor up along the Canadian border. From 50 miles south or so is all 100 miles south. Is all good stuff.
Yep. There's miles and miles we could talk about. So, well,
anytime, that'd be a good conversation.
It would be. I really appreciate your time today, and it's been fun reading the paper, and I definitely encourage everybody out there to take that $27. That's not a lot of money, and it'd be well worth your money to get what's it by? So 24 issues roughly of the
26.
paper, 26 throughout the year. So it's
we talked about the website here quite a bit, and again, it's outdoornews.com/New York, and that's where you can not only subscribe, but you can upload a photo to our Reader Shots page, take part in our surveys. And for the young people, we have this thing called the Junior Pro Team, which is really cool. It's a program that Outdoor News started on its own, and it's basically just for kids under 18 and to get involved. And it actually educates them, kind of puts them up on a pedestal, allows them to interact with each other and interact with people in the industry. It's really a neat program. So I'd like to see some more New York kids involved in that. That'd be great. But it's all there on our website, outdoornews.com/New York.
Awesome. Good stuff, Dan. You better go out and get that sap. I bet you it's overflowing in the bucket.
I do. I got to go check my boil.
All right.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Have a great one. All right.
It's been
See
a pleasure.
Yeah, you too.